It's the 3rd of December 2018. I'm David Griffin. I'm here at Derbyshire County Cricket Club and I'm talking to
Dace Fletcher.
Dave, this is the second interview we've done. The first one we talked about your formative years in the game and in journalism and broadcasting. We talked about quite a difficult first year, 2016, where Derbyshire didn't win a championship game, and you admitted you didn't have that kind of emotional connection to the cricket. What I'd like to do is just look at the last couple of years, 2017, when we had a much better season, and I suspect you started to feel a bit more part of the furniture, as it were.
Yeah.
What are your recollections of 2017? There were quite a few high points, weren't there?
There were, yeah, surprisingly, given what happened in 2016, 2017 was an absolute triumph, really. They didn't win a game until, in the championship that is, until they went to Glamorgan, I think, in the day-night match. Oh, it was horrible. Horrible. The weather was bad, nobody came to watch it, you didn't get out of the ground till 10:30 at night. I'm delighted. It took me a while this year, actually, when I looked at the fixtures, to realise there was no day-night match. And
They've given up on it.
Yeah, absolutely, a waste of time. But we were all quite surprised. We went around taking pictures of the pink ball. It was sort of exciting, but the excitement soon wore off until we realised that Hamidullah Qadri was going to be playing. This 16-year-old spinner who, well, basically, I don't know how much anybody really knew about him, but he became almost the centre of attention for national cricket because of his 5 wickets in the second innings as Derbyshire actually won a game in the county championship, first one I'd seen. He was terrific because for such a young lad, after everything that he's gone through in his life, coming across from Afghanistan and all the rest of it, growing up in Derbyshire from just before his teens, I think. I interviewed him at the end of the first day, thinking, well, I better speak to him. And if he doesn't do anything, what other chance am I going to have apart from the fact he's making his debut? And he was really good. And then, of course, he got his 5 wickets in the second innings, and he was really good again. I had 1 or 2 calls from national newspapers saying, what about this Qadri? What can you tell me about him? And all the rest of it as I'm driving back from Cardiff. So that was good. He's got even more confident, incidentally, as an interviewee, Hamidullah. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago about his trip to India that he's got coming up, and he's got a good head on his shoulders, I think. And then there was the T20. Derbyshire, of course, at that time were one of 2 teams who'd never made it to the finals day. Sadly, they're now the only team. And they got to the quarter-finals, and they did really well. They played some really good T20 cricket.
And there'd been big changes to how T20 was being run in Derbyshire, wasn't there? Because Kim Barnett had brought
John Wright had
Rowe.
come in, absolutely. And Dominic Cork was around the place as well. And you only have to turn up on a match day on T20 to see how excited Cork is to be around a group of players, probably. Whether it's just Derbyshire or whether he'd be the same anywhere else, I suspect he'd probably be the same anywhere else. But his enthusiasm just shone through. He's out on the pitch, putting stuff out, getting the bowlers ready, throwing balls to people. I mean, he just loved being right in the heart of it. Whereas John always seemed to take more of a backseat role, wasn't particularly thrilled about being interviewed or that kind of stuff. But
was it good fun to commentate on? I'm thinking particularly of people like Imran Tahir, whose histrionics when he got a wicket were there for all to see, and of course we've got Hardest Villiers as well, running in and bowling quick. Was it fun to actually commentate on this?
It is fun. It's very much like commentating on football and rugby league, really, in terms of commentary, because it's on the go all the time. They've got an hour and a quarter, whatever it is, to get the innings bowled or batted. So it's full on. But I think it's the form of the game that's going to get the most publicity. It's certainly the form of the game that most local radio stations will say, all right, well, we'll cover that on all frequencies. Very fortunate in Derbyshire to have it on medium wave, which only happens at 3 or 4, the championship, that is. But unfortunately, having got to the quarter-finals, one of the hardest games to commentate on, because there's nothing worse than a one-sided contest. And when Shahid Afridi went berserk early on for Hampshire in the quarter-final, then you knew what was happening. We had, I think, West Erston was with me for the quarter-final, and it was difficult. I'd commentated a few years earlier on Bradford City's magnificent run to the League Cup final, first bottom tier team ever to get to a Wembley final, and all the rest of it. They got beat 5-0 by Swansea, and it was very similar to that, where it was difficult to try and find the positives. The positive was that they'd got to the quarter final, but
it was a damp squib on the night.
That should never be a target for a club, should it? The quarter-finals is well, it's a nice achievement, but you know, it's the one after that everybody's really wants to go and see.
And how do you go about interviewing after that kind of game then? Is that a
well, after they've been thrashed,
when you've lost?
That's why I always feel a bit sorry for Billy Godleman and Gary Wilson, probably in this instance. I think it was Gary. Is that if things are going well, you speak to whoever's done well. If things are going badly, you speak to the captain. And they know that. They're used to that kind of things. I mean, Billy especially has been brilliant. Gary was great, but Billy's been brilliant because he's been the captain the entire time, and they've probably certainly lost more games than they've won. But he's always come out and fronted up as you would expect him to. So yeah, you grab a quick interview and you ask the obvious questions about him. Again, using the word disappointed, and try and focus a little bit for a local audience on the positives. But you got to the quarterfinals; it's something to build on. You can take this into next year, and and that gives you enough time to get enough out of them, or to get what you need out of them. It sounds a bit callous, but that's what it's all about.
There was also that year a tremendous individual performance from Hardisvillian down at Hove. Which I know I consider to be the best sustained combined 2 innings spell of fast bowling I'd seen.
It was absolutely staggering. We have a fantastic view as well at Hove. We're right behind the bowler's arm, and he was like a machine. And we'd seen glimpses of what he could do previous to that, but these, as you say, both innings down at Sussex, it was just astonishing. The second innings, he must have taken the first 5, 6, 7.
I think he took something like, he was on for all 10 certainly.
And Harry Podmore popped up and took one. I've never forgiven him for that, actually, Harry. But yeah, it was just astonishing. Everything he bowled was causing the batsman problems, and nobody else was. I mean, Podmore's a good bowler, as he showed with Kent. Helped him get promotion, but he wasn't a patch on what Hardis was doing. The problem I've got with Hardis is a lovely bloke, always happy to talk, just a bit of consistency from him, and he would be among the best bowlers in the world. No question in my mind, because he's got magnificent spells in him. He's also got Durham away in him last year, which was soul destroying, because Derbyshire got themselves into such a good position and then conceded 86 by extras or whatever it was.
And looking at 2018 then, with a quarter-final secured and 4 championship wins, I think, in 2017, was there, from your perspective, was there a greater expectation going into 2018?
I think so. I think certainly in the T20 there was, because they'd done so well the previous year, and there were little glimpses, weren't there, in the T20? There was that unbelievable game at Chesterfield, where it was done and dusted. Well, after 19 overs, Yorkshire were cruising to a comfortable victory. Tim Bresnan, with all his experience, comes on to bowl the final over. He's bowling to Matt Critchley. And you're thinking, well, perhaps if he hits a couple of 4s early on, they might just make it interesting. And Critchley just went berserk, and Derbyshire won it with a ball or 2 balls to spare. I mean, it was just ridiculous, really.
Well, you think of them as once in a lifetime. I actually turned to Nigel Gardner, one of our colleagues, in the press tent, and actually said to him, I remember Tunnicliffe hitting 17 off the last over to beat Surrey here in 1977, and that's a once in a lifetime. And blow me, 5 balls later, it was twice in a lifetime.
Well, Mystic Nige.
It was Nige kept
Mystic
saying.
Nige said, I think they can do this. I think they can. I only found this out subsequently, because
although he always says that.
He does. I'd have torn him apart for saying it in that particular match, though.
Yeah.
In a friendly way.
It was staggering performance. What's your view of Critchley? Because of the players you've seen over the last 2 or 3 years that you've been doing this job, presumably Critchley's one of those that stands out for you as a young player.
He does. The fact that he bowls leg spin at such a young age means that he has to have a certain kind of mentality for me, because he isn't going to land every delivery, and he's going to get smacked, and he has been smacked. but his batting always looked good from the first time I saw him. He didn't play that much in the first year that I was watching Derbyshire, I don't think. He was sort of in and out at the side a bit. But he's such a stylish batsman, a really stylish batsman. And when he gets going, like he did down at Lords, with his century down there last season, I mean, he had a... It's hard to describe it as a breakthrough season, isn't it? But he got the 10 wickets in the championship match at Chesterfield, and his century down at Lords, and the game in the T20, and he played for the Lions out in the West Indies last winter. You just get the feeling that he is on the verge of something really, really big, Matt Critch.
I think you're right. I think when players emerge, there is the emergence in a non-kind of critical way, and then there's the emergence that we've seen this year.
Yeah.
So he's scored runs and taken wickets before, but to take 10 in a match and win the match, to play that innings against Yorkshire, Chesterfield and win the match, and even though we lost at Lords, to go in at Lords and score 100 and look so serene through the 90s, there was no nervousness.
No, there wasn't.
And you just think, this guy
he's
can
got,
do
he's
it.
got something, hasn't he? And it doesn't. It often isn't just the fact that he can bat and he can bowl. There has to be something up there as well. And the more he gets picked for the Lions and that kind of thing, and he goes to Australia, which he's been to for the last couple of seasons, and works with Stuart McGill, he must know that people think he's quite good, and that must give him confidence, and that confidence ought to come out in match-winning performances, because he's got all the tools. He just needs to be given the opportunity, and this last year, 2018, he was given the opportunity a lot more than he had been the previous two seasons. From memory, I don't know the stats, but and I think he's a special player, and I think they've got one or two really good players. I think that.
Who are the others that you most like to watch then, that most impress you?
Well, see, I like watching Lewis Rees bowl, but I like watching left-handers bowl. I just think it gives an attack a bit more balance. If you've got four medium pace to quick bowlers and they're all right arm over the wicket, then the batsman can get themselves sorted. Left arm over, which will also help the spinners. I like watching him bowl, and he's a strange batsman because he either gets in or he doesn't. I know that sounds stupid, but he either scores quite big or gets nothing at all. But I like his attitude as well, Lewis Rees. He's the kind of player you'd want in your team. He's a real fighter. He can do every job for you. He's always willing when called upon. But there's nobody in and this is genuine. There is nobody in the current Derbyshire squad who I dislike. Who I would say, oh, no, I wish he wasn't playing. It'd be better if they had somebody else in. I love Harvey Hussein's attitude, because he's been in the side, out the side, in the side, told to go make runs, makes runs, comes in the side, dropped again. Was obviously told at the end of last season, you're going to be the wicketkeeper till the end of the season now, Harvey, that's it. Despite the fact that Darren Smith's probably the best gloveman in the club, but he couldn't get in the team for his batting. And Gary Wilson was back from Ireland duty, where he played in a test match, for goodness sake. I know he didn't keep in the test match, but you'd have thought, well, if you're going to put him in the side, give him the gloves, then Harvey goes back to the second team. But he was terrific down at Northampton.
Well, I was going to ask you about that game, because you talked in an earlier interview about how there was a slight disconnect when you first started because you hadn't become a part of the furniture. But by now, one would hope that you feel part of the furniture. And I just wonder, what is it like as a professional broadcaster, sitting alongside another professional broadcaster, Alex Winter, doing a joint commentary at Northampton with a game that Derbyshire win by 1 wicket? I mean, I think the 10th occasion in the club's history they've won a first-class game by 1 wicket. So what was that last hour like? How do you work in those sort of
Well, we were both
situations?
desperate for a tie, of course, because who doesn't want to see a tie in first-class cricket? I think we were as nervous as each other for our respective teams. Alex has been down at Northampton longer than I've been at Derbyshire, of course, so they've had success in the one-day game, but not so much in the 4-day stuff. And you want the team that you're covering to win. It's a funny one, because what happens generally, although Alex isn't like this, he's a bit of a maverick in most senses as far as broadcasting is concerned. He likes to do 20 minutes on, 20 or half an hour on, half an hour off, and the other person summarises. Well, most of the time we do an over on and over off. But when it comes down to the winning moment, generally it's the team that's going to win who gets that over,
Right.
so that their archive has the victory.
Yeah.
So in the Radio Derby archive, we've got Tim Steer describing Derbyshire beating Yorkshire in the last over at Chesterfield. And we've got Alex Winter describing Northamptonshire losing to Derbyshire by 1 wicket as well. I'm not on either of them, which is a little bit disappointing, but there we go. But yeah, I was nervous for them. I was desperate for them to get over the line. And I thought Harvey played really well, and you could see what it meant to him as well. I mean, he's a kid who's come through the ranks here, isn't he? He's come through the academy, and supporters want to see that as well. I know Matt Critchley was in the academy, but he started at Lancashire, so he's almost like a signing, even though he sort of came through the academy towards the end of his youth cricket, if you like. But people just want to see young cricketers home produced, and there possibly hasn't been enough of that in the 3 years that I've been here, I don't think.
Yeah.
Alex Hughes is another one who was already establishing himself when I arrived, who I think, you'd have him in your team every day of the week. I'd bowl him a bit more in the Championship, as he was towards the end of last season than he was at the beginning. He seemed surplus to requirements from the bowling attack, and yet all of a sudden had a good T20, of course, took plenty of wickets, and then they thought, well, we'll bowl him in the Championship as well. And if you've got, it's wrong to call them bits and pieces. They are all rounders, really. It's wrong to call them bits and pieces cricketer because he bats and he bowls. No, he bats really well, although he had a tough time last year. And he bowls really well. And Lewis Rees is exactly the same. And Matt Critchley can be exactly the same. And if you've got 3 players in your team who both bat and bowl,
and all bowl are different.
Who aren't all right arm over. Yeah, absolutely. Who aren't just putting it on a length and hoping for the best. Then if you think you need extra bowlers, you can bring them in. If you think you need extra batters, you can bring them in. So, but I like to see the young players coming through. Having said that, how good was it watching Tony Palladino last year, especially in the second half of the season when he looked unplayable at times, and you're thinking, there's hope for everybody.
And in terms of your relationship with the people who are listening to you, I think back to the days of Peter Edmondson and Ian Hall, going back to when there was no social media. There was a phone in on a Monday night during the cricket season, and that was about it. But presumably now with social media, particularly with Twitter, with email, presumably you do have a relationship with the people.
Yes, there are people listening.
So how does that manifest itself? Do you get emails from people?
We get emails, we get tweets, I tell you what we did get in my first year. We used to get tweets from people who were sitting behind the bowler's arm, because we weren't, and they were actually helping us because we had no idea what the ball was doing, if it was moving, if it was going dead straight, and people were tweeting us and saying, yeah, it's done this, the ball's doing this, the ball's doing that. We got a lot of questions as well, some of which are very difficult to answer because they involve knowing things that the club hasn't announced and stuff like that, but they inform you so that when things are announced that you're prepared for it. So. But yeah, we get a lot of interaction actually. We very rarely see figures, but I can tell you that the game between Yorkshire and Derbyshire at Chesterfield last season, but apart from finals day, and it was the only game on that day, I know, on a Saturday, it had the most requests for the online stream of any T20 game last season. Which I nearly fell off the chair when I saw the figures. In the country, any of them. Now, whether that's because it's Yorkshire, big following, whether it's because it's Chesterfield and people from Derby thought, we can't go, all the tickets were sold, and there was no stream either. There was no television stream because it was at Chesterfield, so we were like the sole information. But so I mean, and that's very gratifying to know that people are actually tuning in.
Absolutely, well, that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Well, David, we've run out of time once again. It's been marvellous listening to your story, and for the second time, thank you very much.
Thank you.